book says it's up to each person to determine whether they think it is or not. So
Oh, okay.
we haven't approached the board or anything like that about it, though.
Okay. Thanks.
Yep. I'll get started here. Good morning, everyone. I'm Jason Fisher. If you don't know me, I'm the assistant district engineer at the Dickinson district. Today, I guess my goal is to just give everybody a little awareness about how to calculate legal loads on our state highway systems. One thing about my training is I'm going to concentrate on state highways, not the interstate. So kind of the methods and what I talk about today is pertaining to state highways only. The interstate system, legal weights are calculated a little bit differently. I'll touch on it a little bit, but I'm not going to go very in depth. Basically, I want to give you guys some tools on how to quickly determine if a load is legal. And then hopefully, maybe after this training, it'll kind of start the conversations in your own districts and with your consultants that you use on how we should be enforcing legal loads on our construction projects to really protect the infrastructure investments, that we're building out there. Maybe just to kind of start off with just a short story that kind of got me really thinking more about this is, we had a road that we repaved, did an overlay on, and a couple years later, a contractor was hauling aggregate from a pit into a plant site. And so we weren't collecting tickets or whatever, weren't monitoring it real well. And over the course of a couple of hot days and many repetitious loads, we ended up with some significant rutting. And it just got me thinking about, we probably need to do a better job about, monitoring these loads, especially if we're not collecting tickets or being on a project, knowing, what these trucks are hauling and understanding what they can legally haul. So with that, I'll jump into my presentation here. I'll share my screen. Josh, are you able to see my presentation?
Yes, sir.
All right. So today, what I want to talk about is, why legal loads are important. What our specs and contracts say on our construction projects. How do you know what the legal limit is for the roadway that you're working on? Different truck configurations, and then how to determine what the legal capacity is for different truck configurations. And then what can be done in the field. So why is it important? I found this from a presentation that Highway Patrol gave a few years back. And in that presentation, they said a 20,000 pound single axle overloaded 20% caused twice the damage of a 20,000 pound legal load. So if you have a single axle loaded to 24,000 pounds versus 20,000 pounds, that can cause twice the damage on our roadways. Similarly, a tandem axle overloaded by 20% can cause 2.25 times the damage as a legal 34,000 pound load. So a 40,800 pound load will cause 2.25 times the damage of a 34,000 pound load. So being overloaded just even a little bit can cause significant damage, maybe even damage that we don't see at the time. So what does our spec say? Our spec tells us that we need to weigh our materials on a certified scale, and they have to give us tickets. And then another part of our spec says do not supply tickets to truck drivers. if the weight of the load is in excess of the legal load. So how do you know what that legal load is? Well, on our DOT website, we have a map that shows us what the legal load is. Most of our roadways are 105,500 pounds. On the map, those are designated by the solid black lines. And then some of our roadways are still 80,000 pounds. We don't have a lot of them, but there are a few out there. And they're designated by the roadways that look like a series of dots. It's a good idea to check this once a year before your construction season starts, because this does get updated once a year, normally after load restrictions are lifted in the spring. So is it good enough to just take your ticket, look at the gross weight, and make sure that the ticket shows less than 105,500 pounds? I think that's kind of what we used to do, what I used to do, I should say. And the answer to that is no, that's not good enough. What we're worried about is max vehicle gross weight. For the most part on our construction projects, I'm not expecting contractors or people to go out and weigh every single individual axle, but we need to monitor what that gross weight is. So I think all of us would agree that these two trucks shouldn't be able to haul the same amount of weight. Which brings us to truck configurations. So there's a lot of different truck configurations out there. I mean, there's straight trucks with, could be anywhere from 3 axles to 7, 8 axles. We've got trucks that have triples under the tractor and triples under the trailer. We got trucks like this one down here that's triple under the tractor and a quad under the trailer. So each configuration of truck that we see on our construction projects is calculated differently to figure out what the legal weight of that truck is. So how do you determine what the truck's capacity is and what it can haul? It's dependent on a few different variables. First is tire size. Normally the tire size is important when you're looking at single axles that aren't duals. So normally your steering axle. And the limit on that is 550 pounds per inch width of tire. The other variables that are important are the axle groupings, whether that be a tandem, a triple, or a quad. The number of axles total on the truck, and the bridge length of the truck, which for state highways is always the length from the front of the steering axle to the furthest rear axle on the truck. So kind of, I call these the bare bones rules for looking at weights very quickly is legally you can haul 20,000 pounds on a single axle. Tandem axle, maybe I can point these out. This would be a single axle. You can haul up to 20,000 on a single axle. You can haul up to 34,000 on a tandem axle. And then you can haul up to 48,000 on a triple or more. So any group, any axle group can't exceed 48,000, whether that be a triple or a quad or 5 or whatever. On the interstate system, that's a little bit different, but on the state highway system, any axle group can't exceed 48,000. So using this basic information, we could quickly say this truck should be able to haul 20 on the steer, 34 on the tandem, and 48 on the triple for 120 or 102,000 pounds. But it's not quite that simple because we need to look at those other factors. So the first factor we want to look at is that tire size. And like I said before, that's really important for the steering axle. So tire size is generally expressed in metric units. Like the tire I show here is a 315/80 R22.5. So the 315, that's your tire width. If you're looking at English tires, they might say like 1000 by 20s. You know, they'll start with like a 10.00 or 11.00, and those are actually inches. But normally our tires are expressed in metric units, and to convert that to inches, you just divide it by 25.4 millimeters per inch. So this particular tire would be 12.4 inches wide. You can legally haul 550 pounds per inch width. You got 2 tires. So this steering axle legally could have 13,640 pounds on it. There's a chart on the Highway Patrol website that can quickly make these conversions for you. So if we assume this is a 12-inch wide tire, the chart from the Highway Patrol website, you can use that and it'll show that this axle could haul 13,200 pounds. So now with the information we know, this truck could haul 13,200 on the steer, 34,000 on the tandem, 48,000 on a triple, for a total of 95,200 pounds. So now the next question is, can we assume that this truck can haul that? Not quite. There's still one more thing we need to look at, and that's the bridge length. So like I said, the bridge length is measured from the front of the steering axle to the furthest rear axle. And this bridge length will generally be your limiting factor on tractor trailer configurations with triples or quad axles. So again, on the North Dakota Highway Patrol website, there's a table on there. Looks like this. That will tell you what that truck capacity is based on the bridge length. So I measured this truck, going back here again, I measured this bridge length of this truck to be 60 feet. And using this chart at 60 feet and a total of 6 axles, he's legal at 90,000 pounds. So if you remember right, when we used just the axles, he was at, I believe, 95,200 pounds. But if we use that bridge length, he's only legal at 90,000. So we shouldn't be getting tickets for this particular truck over 90,000 pounds, or he's over the legal weight. So here's just a zoomed in of that chart. Again, the bridge length was 60 feet. He's got 6 axles, and so he's legal at 90,000 pounds. If you're into the math, this is how the chart is calculated. I put the equation down here. If you actually work the math out on all of these, you'll find that there's some rounding obviously in this chart, but this chart is pretty quick to use. So let's take a look at another one. I guess I can stop real quick and see if anybody's got questions. You can always put your hand up. I'll try to answer it, but maybe let's just take a look at this big truck here and calculate it. So again, tire size on the steering axle, it's a 12-inch wide tire. So he's good to 13,200 pounds. If you use the tire size plus his axles, 48,000 on the triple and 48,000 on the quad, he'd be legal at 109,200 pounds. Again, we need to look at his bridge length. So this truck has a total of 8 axles and a 69-foot bridge length from the front of the steering axle to his furthest rear axle. And using the chart again, at 69-foot bridge length and 8 axles, he is good for 105,500 pounds, but he's barely good. So the takeaway that I want to kind of you to take away from this here is that if you're going to haul 105,500 pounds on a construction project, this is the size of truck that you're going to need to do that. Very, very large truck. So takes a big, long truck to be able to actually haul 105,500 pounds legally. How big a truck does it take? If you had a single, triple combination, which would be a 7-axle truck, it would take a truck with a bridge length of 78 feet long. The single, triple, quad, like we just looked at, would need a bridge length of 69 feet if he had 8 axles. And then the single, if you had a single quad trip combination, you could shorten that bridge length up to 60 feet, but we don't see very many trucks that would have that kind of configuration. So again, here's another example, a pretty common truck that we would get on a construction site with tandem tractor and tandem trailer. Again, he could haul 20. If we're looking at our bare bones rules, we could haul 20 on the steer, 34 on each of the tandems for a gross of 88,000. Again, checking our other factors. We look at the tire size. This is a 11-inch wide tire. So looking at our chart, he can haul 12,100 on the steer, 34 on each tandem, gets him to 80,100 pounds. Looking at the bridge length of 64 feet and 5 axles, that gets us to 88,000. So on this single tandem truck, the limiting factor is not the bridge length, but it's the axle weights. So this truck would be legal at 80,100 pounds. So I'll show you one more way here to calculate these. I know we all like to use computer programs, and this is a kind of a little bit quicker method. I'll try to get these links to work. So under the Highway Patrol website, here there's a lot of really useful information about trucks and weights and so on and so forth. And there's a link here to a truck weight calculator. And if you go to that calculator, it's a pretty neat, easy tool to use. So basically all you have to do is select your highway type. Like I said, interstate and state highways are calculated differently, and today we're focusing on state highways. So you're going to select state highway. There's no load restrictions generally during our construction projects, so we're by legal weight. And then you just select the axle count. So this particular truck has 6 axles. So the first thing it's going to ask you is axle 1. So number of tires, it's the steering axle, so there's 2 tires. We're going to assume a tire size of, we'll just assume an 11-inch tire size. And let me check something quick here. Yeah. So we'll assume an 11-inch tire size, and then next thing you do is select the distance from your steering axle to your next to axle number 2. So in this case, that's 20 feet. Axle number 2, because he's got duals on both sides, he's got 4 tires. Again, we'll assume these are 11-inch tires, and you hit next. Now it's going to ask you the information about the distance between axle 2 and 3. So here that's 4 feet, 11-inch tires again. Now the distance between axle 3 and 4 on this truck is 32 feet. Between axle 4 and 5 is 4 feet. And between axle 5 and 6, again, is 4 feet. Once you plug that in, this button will turn to calculate, and you can, it'll give you a report on this truck about what it can legally haul. They even draw you a little picture to make sure that what you entered in is correct. So on this truck, it shows us the legal gross vehicle weight for this truck is 92,500 pounds. And it's based off of the bridge length for the truck. So here again, that's that report. The bridge length would have showed us 92,500. If we looked at it by axles, he could have hauled 94,100 pounds. So the bridge length was the limiting factor. We'll do one more here with the calculator. This is, again, state highway by legal weight. He's a 5-axle truck, 2 on the steer, 20-foot bridge length, or 20 foot between the first axle and second axle. He's got 4 feet between the axle 2 and 3, 34, and another 4 feet. We calculate that truck. Again, we come up to legal gross weight of 80,100 pounds. And that was based off of his axle weights, not his bridge length, which would have showed 87,000. So on a tandem, you're looking at normally axle weights that are going to be your limiting factor. So I'm sure everybody has seen this truck out on your projects. And of course, we all get a little nervous one. What's that? If you're like me, you get a little nervous when you see this guy come onto your job. And so I kind of wanted to look at this truck, they call him the Super 18, and kind of go over what you see in this picture. You can see here that this truck is backed into our paver. This is on one of our projects. Backed into our paver, his rear axle is up, and all 3 of his tag axles are up here. So again, let's pull up the calculator and take a little look at what this particular truck is doing. Oops. Okay, so to start with, if he had all of his axles down, he would have 5, he'd have seven axles. We'll select state highway and 7 axles. His first axle is 2 tires. I looked at this truck, it had 15-inch wide tires on the front. Distance to the second axle is 8 feet. The next axle is only 2 tires again, because these are singles, and these are 11-inch tires. The next one is going to be 3.5 feet, so 3 feet 6 inches. Again, it's 2 tires, 11 inches. We got 3.5 again. The next axle, our distance is 4 feet. This is 4 11-inch tires. And finally, our last axle, the distance is 12 feet. And again, that's a single back there, single axle, or not duals. And we calculate that. You see, we come to a legal gross weight of 76,600 pounds when all of his axles are down. There is a permit that they can get for a straight truck on a divisible load that would allow this truck, I think, to haul up to 80,000 pounds, but for the purpose of this, we'll assume they don't have that permit. So now let's take a look at if he's backing up and has the tag axles down, but the rear axle is up. So, we'll look at the difference. So here, if we use 6 axles, everything stays the same as we had it before. So we have 8 feet, and I'll just toggle through these because we only eliminated the back axle. So we went from 76, almost 77,000 down to 64,000 just because he has that rear axle up. And if we finally look at the configuration that this truck is in right now on my project, where he only has 3 axles, so the distance from the first axle to the second axle is, let's see, 8 and 7 is 15, 19 feet. And then 4. I think I messed that up. No, that's correct. And it dropped, so in this configuration, that dropped this truck all the way down to 50,500 pounds that he could legally be loaded to. So it makes a huge difference how many axles are on the ground, and it's definitely something to look out for. If you're backing this truck up into one of your subcuts, or you got a section of pavement that's kind of thin, you don't want to be probably backing this truck down your grade very far, looking like this. So just kind of a summary of this truck again. We look at the different legal weights he could be with different axle configurations all on the same truck. I talked to the contractor. They said the tear weight of this truck is 31,000 pounds. And just look at what that does to the material weight that truck can haul. If all of his axles are down legally, he can haul almost 23 tons. If all of his axles are up, he can only haul 11. So just imagine if you have a 23-ton load on this truck and he backs into your paver looking like this. Could really do some damage. So what can we do in the field? The biggest thing is just be aware of who is trucking and where. I think we should request and verify the legal truck weights from the contractor, or measure and calculate them yourself. We want to arm our ticket takers and contractor scale person with what those legal weights are. I was surprised. I asked a contractor one time, I said, well, how do you know how much to put in that truck? Because they were using a loader bucket scale to haul material into a plant site. Again, we weren't getting the tickets. So, well, how in the world do you know what to load into? He said, well, when the truck pulls up, they radio to the loader guy how much to fill him up, or how much weight to put in him. And I said, well, how is the trucker paid? Because independent truck driver. How is a trucker paid? And he said, well, by the weight that he hauls. So they pay these trucks by the ton, and it's the truck driver telling the loader operator how much to put in him. So I don't have a lot of faith that they're always loading these trucks legally. I talked to Highway Patrol about that a little bit, and they said, we don't mess with your construction trucks, unless you ask us to, because we don't want to slow things down for you guys. So we're kind of expecting that you guys are watching that and taking care of that. So the chances of them truck drivers ever being pulled over is probably pretty low. The other thing we want to do is make sure we're getting accurate tare weights on trucks. If we're using batch, loader, hopper scales, we need to train our ticket takers on what we want them to look for out there. And then we want to talk to the contractors about how we're going to enforce legal weights on the job. I'm trying to give you guys some of the tools, you know, to be able to do this and do a good job at it. But we also got to pass them tools down to, again, our inspectors, ticket takers, consultants. And then if you're out inspecting a job, we really want to look for potential overweight situations, just like that truck that backed into my paver with his tag axles up. And I'm not saying you should kick all them trucks off your job. I'm just saying in sensitive situations, we got to be, you know, use our heads and make sure that we're not going to damage something that we shouldn't. So a couple of things to look out for, you know, on your tickets, you know, what we require. You know, on a platform scale, if we have a platform scale, we require them to give us the gross weight and the tare weight. But on a batch or hopper or loader bucket scale, the only thing we're getting is the net weight. So you have no idea based on that ticket how much that truck weighs unless you request those tare weights from the contractor. And I don't think there's anything wrong with doing that. And it has to happen in the field, because once it gets to the point where you're putting it into cars, and everybody probably does it differently, but the way we'll do it is, you know, a ticket taker will get the tickets, get the haul sheet at the end of the day, reconcile the haul sheet, get the contractor and DOT signature on it, and gets loaded into cars. That haul sheet isn't required to have the gross weight of the truck on it. It really only needs the weight of the material. So this stuff needs to, we need to catch this stuff in the field early. This last slide is just full of links. The first link is to the highway patrol charts I was showing you guys earlier. The next link, will take you to that calculator. Link of the state highway load restriction map. And then this last one is takes you to the motor carrier's handbook on the highway patrol site, which has a ton of information in it. It talks about, you know, like e-logs and all that stuff. And when truckers say, well, we're out of hours, if you're curious about what all the rules are on that, that's all in there. That's kind of the end of the presentation. I know this is a lot, and I just want to do one more real quick thing. I'm going to jump to this link here. This is a chart. I think that it's a 2-pager. I think if you laminated this and kept it with you in your truck, you would be in really good shape. And we could just take a quick look and think, well, how it seems like we're asking for a lot, you know, and I just kind of want to put this in a real case situation. So let's say that you're a ticket taker out on the job, and a truck pulls up and he's full of gravel, and you look at the truck, go up and get the ticket from the truck driver, and you notice the truck has a triple on the tandem on his tractor part and a triple on the trailer. I think it'd be really simple to just tell that truck driver, hang on here 1 second before you dump your load. Walk up to the front of the truck, look at his front axle, and see what his tire size is. And you can jump to the chart down here, which would give you your tire widths and what that load would be. So you figure he's got 11-inch tires. He can handle 12,100 on his steering axle. You write that down on your field book. You notice that he's got a triple or a tandem triple on his tractor. So you know right away that's 48,000 pounds. and 34 on his tandem. Those three numbers, you add them together real quick. You can take your measuring wheel, measure his bridge length. If his bridge length is 65 feet and he's got 7 axles, 98,000 pounds. So you run those two numbers, it should take you 3 minutes to do that. You look at his ticket. If his ticket is less than that, you put it on your clipboard, you're good to go. If he's over that, then that's where I think a call would be made to a contractor superintendent or your project manager to resolve the situation. I know we're getting a lot of overloaded trucks out there, especially when we're not getting tickets. And I know that it can cause significant damage to our roads. And I just wanted to bring that to everybody's attention. And maybe a further conversation sometime in the future of how we should be enforcing this in the field. So with that, I can take any questions real quick. Otherwise, I'll turn it over to Heather for another presentation.
Yeah, Jason, this is Dustin in Grand Forks. Kind of, and maybe you didn't want to quite get into it today, but well, I guess you kind of ended right where I was kind of going for, is like, well, what is our obligation as, a construction field staff in this situation? Yeah, I talked to the contractor and then what? Are they obligated to under our direction to reduce the load, or do we get the highway patrol involved if we got a situation, or what should we be doing?
I think it's probably a conversation that each district needs to have amongst themselves to figure out exactly how they want to enforce, this. Maybe it's a bigger conversation for all of construction. I guess my recommendation, the way I would probably would expect this to be done is, a cooperative effort. Again, if I looked at a particular truck and he could haul 92,000 pounds legally and he came in at 94, I would probably the first time say, this guy's overweight. He can dump his load, but from now on, we can't see this guy hauling more than 92,000 pounds. He comes back out to the job and he's got more than that on it, I'd probably make him dump off a little bit of material and send him back to the plant and reweigh. I think we are obligated to protect our roadways. We know better. Our specs say that we shouldn't be hauling overweight loads, and we could end up with a lot of resistance from the contractor. And I think at that point, from the conversations I've had with highway patrol, they're like, we'll leave you guys alone, but if you ever need anything, call, we'll come out. So I think, if it got bad enough, you could weigh every truck. Highway patrol could weigh every truck when they come out there. And again, they're going to be a lot more stringent than what I'm showing you, because they're going to check every single axle.
Sure.
We're looking at absolute best case scenario here. We say if that load is perfectly positioned on the truck and all them axles are spread out just the way they should be, so they could all hold their maximum amount, this is what they should be at. Chances are they're never going to get as much on the steering axle as what they legally could, because the loads are shifted further back.
Sure.
So
Personally, I really dislike that strategy on highway patrol's part. If they're willing to look the other way and then want us to ask for enforcement, it's like, well, why don't you care enough about the legal limits to do what, in my opinion, is their job to enforce? So I really don't like that approach, and maybe every highway patrol district is different, of course, but
I don't think they're necessarily looking the other way, Dustin. I just think that there's a understanding that they know that we're by our contract our trucks are supposed to haul legal. And if we're getting them tickets and we know what those weights are, that we're already enforcing that. Any other questions?
Hey, Jason, there's a couple in the chat. I don't know, kind of maybe summed up some of it, but what happens when they throw a super single on the drive and trailer? Is that chart taking those into consideration?
Yeah, so super single, again, it's 550 pounds per width. So that super single might be a 20-inch wide tire. And if you look at tire charts, if they get up to remember, you can only have 20,000 pounds on a single axle anyway. So if you're getting up to them super singles where you're, at 18 or 20-inch wide tires, you're going to be out of that. You're going to be above that anyway. So you can check it on the super singles, but if you have an axle that instead of a dual, it has a super single, again, that tandem axle could only hold the 34,000 anyway. So chances are that's not going to come into play, but you can certainly check it. It's still 550 pounds per inch tire.
Yeah, I think that's about it. The other one was talking about our e-ticketing program. That'd be something we'd have to look into.
Yeah, hopefully, there'd be a way with e-ticketing at least, to be able to put the legal weight for the truck in. If the truck comes out of the job the first time and you determine what its legal weight is, it'd be neat if that program could kind of automatically flag that. But whether it can or not, I don't know. I don't have a lot of experience with e-ticketing, so.
And one more came in just now. So how are we supposed to manage this when doing removal work?
That's a really good question. Because you don't, I guess I was thinking about that very same thing. I think what you're referring to is this situation right here, right? So you don't get a ticket for this until after he's driven 20 miles down your road. And I think there again, somebody has to go to the scale and see what it is. And if he's overweight, we got to tell the milling operator you can't fill him as full. We're not gonna prevent every overload. I don't think there's any way that we can. But at the same time, we can't heap these things up till they're spilling over the edge, and let them haul down our milled surface, or we could be doing a year's worth of damage to that road that we shouldn't be doing. So it's difficult, but I think it's semi-manageable.
Nope, no pun intended there.
Okay, with that, I'll turn it over to Heather. She's gonna go over some of the the ways that we are looking at prompt payment in B2G now, or CCS. So I'll turn it over to Heather. Thank you.
Yeah, good morning. Like Jason said, Heather Brew. I'll share my screen here out of Dickinson. And I'm going to change gears and I'm going to cover the certification and compliance system, also known as B2G now. And I'm basically going to be covering this because this is what we're using today to monitor our prompt payment with our contracts. So if you went to the conference, like all of us should have been, Doug was on one of the breakout sessions yesterday morning and he covered prompt payment and more so the requirements of why, but it's in our spec. And basically this came directly out of spec book. This is Prompt payment is within 20 calendar days of receiving payment from the department. So today, B2G Now, or the certification and compliance system, is our best way to monitor that. So my goal today, I guess, is to be able to show you a quick way to check your contracts that you have going and how you can verify that there was prompt payment. So some of my discussion items today are going to be the contract parameters, the navigation overall, how to get around in the system. It's relatively easy, but it looks really busy right away. The initial setup, the contact information. This is important for your primes and your subs because there's a lot of data that's automatically populated, notifications, different things that go out to the group. Prompt payment, like I said. There's a compliance audit summary that's kind of nice, so you can look at your different contract amounts. The dashboard, like I show here on the screen, how to personalize it, and then help and support. So you can do different trainings and things off to the side on your own. So I'm going to jump into the system right away because it's easier to show you than actually talk through it. So if you've not been into the system, this is what it looks like. Hopefully everybody has a login and is set up. I can't help you get set up, Civil Rights will have to do that, but I will log in with just your regular email. And this is your main dashboard, right? So in your dashboard here, this is what everybody should look like right away when you get set up. All this stuff on the right-hand side here, these alerts, the system just news, the tools, you can't change any of that. That's always going to be there. This is kind of where they push their, their updates and different things that are coming up. But this whole side on the left here where there's this yellow, I'll show you how we can go in and we can personalize later, and you can add different reports or different stuff that you want to track because maybe you're doing things other than prompt payment, but I'm going to show you the prompt payment part. So left side here, this is your main navigation. The stuff that I use is home, search, and then down here, this help and support. So I'm going to jump in. Like I said, here's your home dashboard. This is your main screen. So I'm going to go search and go down here to contracts. So this is different ways that you can search contracts. This reference number is also the PCN number, contract title. Any of these that you want to filter by, you can plug stuff in. We use PCNs all the time. Everybody does. So I'm going to go in and I'm going to enter PCN 22429. Okay. So here, enter the PCN and hit search. So here's my contract. So this is the main screen here showing your PCN number 22429. Here's a description that they entered. Here's my prime contractor, bituminous. Here's my contract amount. And then under this actions area, there's a little extra selections that we'll go through some of these later, but it can give you more information on your contract. So the first thing I'm going to talk about, I guess, is your contact information. So there's a few ways you can look at it. So what's important about this is this was a chip seal that we did last year, and bituminous did not have all their contact information in the system. So when we went to go check the prompt payment, there was subcontractors that weren't even entered in there because they didn't have an email entered. They didn't get any of the notifications. So if you come here, you can click just on the prime contractor's name, and this will show their vendor information here. So we came back in the end and we added an email, but originally there wasn't you can see here, this is blank. There wasn't an email in here. So they weren't getting any notifications at all. So you want to come in here and verify that they have all the information in here that you need in order to contact them. So if you simply come in here and just click on your PCN number, it'll take you into the main screen of the actual contract. So here, once again, it's listing the contact information for the prime. And then down here, it shows who your compliance officers are. And then here's where it lists your subcontractors. And so in this project, there was 3 subcontractors. Like I said, you can get lots of different information in lots of different areas in this system, but you can either click here and manage subcontractors, or you could go up here into subs to see your subcontractors. All these tabs up here, you can click through and see lots of different information. Anything that you need to find on your contract, you'll find up here. So say we need to go check our subcontractor contact information, you can just simply click on subs. Once again, it shows the prime, but then here's the 3 subcontractors, okay? So on the right-hand side, there's these action buttons, and when you click more, it'll show more information, and all these are the same for all your primes, all your subcontractors. But here you can go view profile, and this is where you can see that they have the information in here. So here you see their name, and this is the contact for the email. So when there's prompt payment notification sent out, it'll go to this Jamie B. There's extra information, always, better to have more than not, but this is where you can verify your subcontractor information. So, oh, I also want to say too, at the pre-job, it's probably a good idea to have this conversation, but the prime contractor is the one in charge of putting and entering the subcontractor information. Civil rights will set up the prime and get the contract set up in the system, but just make it clear to your prime that they're in charge of entering the subcontractors. And you can see right here, it's a simple click and then it'll prompt them to fill out a bunch of fields with all the information. But they're in charge of adding them throughout the project too. You can see down here, if you scroll down further, that J.R. Dawson was added after the project proposal was done because they needed an extra subcontractor. So this prime contractor had to go in and enter that. So once we have our contact information, so we'll go back to the main screen. Like I said, these are your main navigation tools for your contract. But I'm going to go here again, search contracts, and I'm going to search a different contract number here. I'm going to go 23166. Once again, PCN number, project, and the prime, and then the contract amount. And I will just click into the contract. You can't really screw a lot of stuff up in here. You can navigate and bounce back and forth, see lots of different information in different spots. So what we're going to go do is we're going to check and see prompt payment on the subcontractors for this contract. So I'll click on subs. Once again, here's Martin Construction. They're the prime contractor. Like I said, over here on the right-hand side, these more functions, you can see more. Here you can view their profile, make sure all their contract or contact information is in there. And then here are the subcontractors listed on this project. So like I said, more. And if we want to look at prompt payment, you just click here for payments. So here we're into Crowell Trucking. You can see their contract value, their subcontract award, their total payments made. This was a previous project, so it has a lot more information as we're getting up and running. But so say we want to look at prompt payment. We saw they got paid $16,000 here in the month of October. If you just click on this month of October, it'll actually expand all of the subcontractor payments for the month of October. So that's kind of nice. They're all in the same spot. But if you come over here and you see here where it says this period and confirmed by sub. So this is saying that, yes, right here, there is prompt payment. So this is prompt payment to the prime contractor. And they confirmed that, yes, they were paid promptly. And over here, Crowell Trucking is saying, yes, we confirmed we got paid, but no, it was not prompt payment. So prompt payment within 20 days. So they're saying, yes, we got paid, but no, it was not within the 20-day period. And even if you want to look a little bit more, you can go right here where it says view. And here it lists the payment date. So this is the date that the prime contractor got paid, that they reported they got paid. And here's the date that the sub is reporting that they got paid, okay? But here it's saying, yes, the prime was paid within 20 days, and the subcontractor said, no, the prime did not pay me within 20 days. So a quick way to confirm your prompt payment. So if you see no, I would recommend, or what we do is I had a simple conversation with the prime contractor to remember 20 days in our spec, you have to pay your subcontractors within 20 days. And then just verifying that the subcontractors are actually going in here and updating their prompt payment confirmations too. Like I said, there's lots of different information and lots of different views, but between the main and the subs, there's really this compliance audit summary, like I had mentioned, is kind of nice too, to see your dollar value for your contract when it's running. But there's just lots of different ways to view different information. So like I said here, this more actions, you can go in here and you can see this is under the prime contractor themselves. You can see their payments and when they made payments to people, but it's still the same steps, just in a different area, right? So you could go into the month of September and you'll see right here that they were paid in the month of September, and it goes right back down to that same screen. And you can see who was paid promptly, who wasn't paid. Even if they aren't paid, they like to have it confirmed that, yes, we got $0. So just keeping them in the loop of checking all of their payments that have gone through in the system. So with that, I'm going to jump back and I'll show you the back at the home screen. So just over here on the top, this is, like I said, your home screen, your home dashboard. So one thing that I like to do is this personalized button here. So we know we have way too much snow outside, but I will show you how when you have contracts that are active and running, you can go and you can, what's this priority flag contract? So all this stuff that I'm showing you here, you can add to your main dashboard, which basically like creates quick links. So I like priority flag contracts and favorite reports. So what you can do is, so you can pick if you want it on the left side or the right side, and you can pick what order you want it, what color you want it. You can mess with all that however you'd like, but all you do here is simply hit add dashboard, okay? So now I had went in and I'd flagged these were contracts that I have going, and I'm watching and monitoring their DB Eagles and their contract values and their prompt payment. So we go under this 23166. How did I get this under a flag contract? So simply back over here, left side, you go search contract. Once again, PCN number, search, and then you go into your contract. Right up here, you see this little red flag. This one says remove from dashboard because I already had it. So this is how you simply add to that dashboard. So this is that priority flag contract. So you simply click that. And now if you go back to your home page, these are all the contracts that I have flagged. So it's just kind of nice. You can go, oops, and you can just jump right into your contracts instead of having to search. Same as this, these are some reports that I run for some payments and some other things. So if you find any reports, excuse me, that you like, you can add those to this list. And it's simply just going under, once you have something added, you can just configure and you can add or remove stuff to your configuration. So then I'm going to hit on this help and support a little bit. In this help and support, there's this video library. I went through some of those. This is basically pre-recorded stuff that you can look at. It's kind of got the basic navigation things, some stuff on reports. You can see the description over here. So you can go into any of these anytime. All of these, there's different, so these are more of the basic ones. There is some, if you go over here to these training classes, that you can actually jump on and go RSVP. You can see there's open spaces to this one. So introduction to the system, what is that? You just click on this RSVP button. And here it'll tell you the information. You can figure out if it's applicable, what you're looking for, what you're trying to figure out. Typically, these are basic introductions, and then it gets into more in-depth ones on how to add subcontractors or different. It depends on what aspect you're looking at. Consultants and contractors can use these too. But like I said, this video library, it kind of has your basic ones that can show you around for what you're, if you're just doing prompt payment, it's pretty minimal. Like I said, up here. So my end, I guess my end goal is for you to be able to navigate prompt payment pretty easy. Like I said, there's lots of snow out there. You guys probably don't have too many active contracts. So I put together a short procedure that you can reference. More than happy to share this with anybody and everybody if you want. It's gonna walk you through kind of what I just rattled off, probably relatively quick, but, so you can see here, the link to the system. Like I said, I can't set you up, but civil rights can set you up how to manage, go through your dashboard, how to personalize it, and it'll step you through kind of everything on how to search your PCN, same way, how to view your contact information, add subcontractors, and how to verify your prompt payment. So like I said, I'm willing to share that with anybody, but let's do one more example. So say Jason comes to me and says, okay, on your Martin box culvert for the month of, I don't know, October, can you verify that Fisher Sand and Gravel got paid promptly? So I come in here and simply go search contracts, BCN number 23166. Okay, hit search. Enter into the contract, Martin Construction, I got the right project. Okay, and I'm gonna go under subs. And he wanted me to check for Fisher Sand and Gravel for the month of October. Okay, here's Fisher Sand and Gravel. More. Go to payments. Okay, Fisher Sand and Gravel, got the right one. Okay, month of October, they got paid $40,000. Go into the month of October. Scroll down. Fisher Sand and Gravel. Here we got our prompt payment. Yes, confirm they're paid, and yes, it was paid promptly. So I could go back and I could say, yes, they got paid promptly. So in a nutshell, like I said, it's a lot of kind of clicking back and forth. You see a lot of information in a lot of different views. Like I said here, even if you go to the compliance audit summary, you can see your contract values, where you're at, but here you could see your contract, your paid amounts. So they're contracted 15, they got paid 17. I mean, there's lots of different ways to view things for prompt payment. Once again, here it is, payments. And you can go down to the month. Here was our previous 16,000 in October. And you can go down and see if they were paid promptly or not. I did ask, you could see here, there's an NA. I did ask Amy Conklin on this NA part, and some of the stuff that gets automatically pushed, she said this can be some errors that are resulting in a few different ways, but if you get this on your project when you're checking it, I would recommend checking it like the 1st and the 15th probably of every month, because you know when your estimates were ran, you can check them, but you gotta wait until accounting processes all their stuff. But if you have NA, you can click view and sometimes it'll give you an answer. But this could have just been an error in the system too. But she said that you're more than welcome to reach out to her. She manages the DBE payments and Doug will manage the non-DBE payments. But typically it'll be a yes or a no. So I guess with that, I think that was what I had to go over for prompt payment. If anybody has any questions for me, I will share that procedure if anybody wants it. Otherwise, that was all I had.
Thanks, Heather. And Jason, that was good. Yeah, Heather, it's been in the chat. People are asking if you could share that maybe in the chat too, what you put together. It's a good guide. So next up, we got Williston. Take it away, Bill.
Okay, thanks, Josh. Share my screen here, make sure you can see it and you can see my screen and hear me.
Yep.
Okay, I'm Bill Gathman. I work in the Williston District, and today I'm going to visit a little bit about traffic control inspection, things to look for, things we see out here that I guess causes problems and what we do about it, and I guess just talk about traffic control inspection in general. So first of all, I guess before we get into the inspection part, want to talk about the purpose of traffic control, why we use it, and what it's for. You know, the purpose of traffic control is basically allow for the smooth flow of traffic through our work zones. It helps guide motorists safely through the work zone. It also separates and protects the workforce from the motorists. And it warns motorists of any hazards that they might find in the work zone. Now, when we set up the traffic control, we want to make sure that these devices meet certain requirements to serve a purpose. You know, they need to, first of all, they need to fulfill a need. So in other words, you know, we only want to use devices out on our project that apply to the situation. We don't want to put stuff out there that might be confusing to motorists, don't apply to the situation. Just make sure that if you put something out there that they fulfill a need. We also want to make sure that the devices command attention. We want the motorist to see it. We want them to be new, bright, reflective, easily seen, so that motorists can see them and abide by what's going on out there. And we also want to make sure that they convey a clear and simple message. We don't want to confuse the motorists. We want to get them through safely, quickly. So don't have any extra devices out there that are gonna cause confusion. So I guess at the start of a project, you know, there's a few questions you need to ask yourself. I guess first of all, how do you know what traffic control setup to use? You know, what drawing to use, what plan sheet, and then second of all, does the setup match the drawing? They set it up according to plan. Is it what it's supposed to be? Another question, are the devices in acceptable condition? We don't want to put devices out there that are unacceptable, that don't meet the intent of what we're trying to accomplish. And then, does everything make sense? Just because there's a drawing or a plan note or something that we have out there, if it doesn't make sense, it's not gonna work. So those are the things we wanna look for. So I guess the first question is, you know, that we ask is, how should the initial traffic control be set up? And I'm going to go through an example here, but you know, usually in section 100 of the plans will show the work zone traffic control, or section 704 of the standard drawings will also, you know, show the traffic control setup. So in this particular example, I took this out of a temporary bypass we had on one of our projects a couple of years ago. You can see up in the upper right that this was taken out of section 100 plan sheets. It's a temporary bypass, and that basically shows the layout. So, second question, are the correct signs used? Are the spacing of the devices correct? Now that'd be the spacing between the signs, barricades, panels, any device out there. Now, the spacing that we talk about on our plans are usually a minimum. Those can be adjusted, and they should be adjusted if needed. You know, if there's anything in the way, another sign, a permanent sign, or a overhanging tree, or whatever, the spacing can be adjusted and should be adjusted. If there's signs on the project, are they pointing the right way? And I mean, that might sound simplistic or crazy, but I've seen it where signs or arrows are pointing the wrong way, or they're even upside down. Are the channeling devices correctly placed? These are all things to look for. So just to step through this example a little bit and talk about those questions in the previous slide. So obviously, once the traffic control is set up, you want to drive through and make sure that the signs shown in this drawing are placed on the project at the right location. So you're looking for, you know, the correct sign, the correct placement, Again, the spacing, which can be adjusted if it needs to. Reverse curve signs. I know it sounds simple, but make sure that it's the right reverse curve sign and not the left reverse curve sign. The arrow that's on the barricade, make sure that arrow's pointing the right way. All those things, I guess, are things to look for. This next picture, I guess I'm just going to talk about some things in this picture. This isn't the actual location that I shown in the previous slide with the bypass, but this is very similar to what that bypass would have looked like. So in this picture, I guess one of the first things I would talk about are the vertical panels. First thing I look at are the vertical panels put in correctly. Are they pointing in the right direction? Are they channeling the traffic? In this case, yes, it is. It's channeling them down and towards the lane of traffic. So those are correct. Kind of in the upper right of the picture, you can see the type 3 barricades. Road closed or an arrow sign on the other side of those, but those are also pointing in the correct direction down towards the traveling lane. We have tubes, we have barrels in these pictures. Those all look like they're in an acceptable condition. Placed correctly, you'd want to check for the spacing. Now, the one thing I'll say about this picture, and it all looks good right now, it's probably freshly set up or it's freshly clean, but you can tell that this bypass, I mean, obviously it's gravel and it looks like it just rained. So one thing that's going to happen here is those devices are all going to get dirty as traffic comes through there. So that's the one thing we really have to watch out here, is making sure that those devices get cleaned when they need to be cleaned, because if they're dirty, they're no longer serving their purpose. You can't see, and it could be somewhat confusing. So, you know, I think that this is a good example of the setup. You just want to make sure that the devices are clean. The other question we ask ourselves, are the devices in an acceptable condition? Now, at the start of a project, all of the devices need to be in a new or like new condition. They need to be acceptable. You know, as the project goes on, you expect some wear and tear of the devices, whether they get run over or hit or whatever. You know, a certain percentage, 25% of those devices can fall into a marginal classification, but once it goes beyond that, they need to be removed and replaced to make sure that the devices are still meeting the intent, and they can be easy to follow. Might ask, what are an acceptable, marginal, or unacceptable device? This particular situation, or this picture here, obviously on the left, is acceptable sign. It looks new. All the letters and words are there. Not really any dings or anything on it, which that's how we want it when we start. Now, like I said, as the project goes on, things are going to happen, whether they get hit or blow over or whatever. But that middle picture, obviously, that's had some wear and tear on it, but it's still serving its purpose. It's still in a marginal condition, which is fine. I mean, that sign is still fine, but when you get to the right there, you're missing letters. It's getting banged up on the side. Probably not much reflectivity left to it. Those are unacceptable signs. You need to get those off the project. And this is just another acceptable, marginal, unacceptable pictures of some devices with, you know, tubes and barrels, and you can kind of see how the age progresses on them, whether they get ran over, beat up, or knocked down, or whatever. But really, it's, are they serving their purpose? And if they're not serving their purpose anymore, they need to be removed from the project. This setup, before I go any further, I want to thank, I got some pictures from Dickinson. I want to thank Dickinson for sharing some pictures with me here. I'm using some of their pictures in this presentation, but anyway, this particular picture, I just want to talk about a few things on here. You know, this is a new setup. This is at the start of the project. You can see traffic's not even on the crossover yet, but you know, the things I see on this picture, first of all, are the reflective tabs on top of the concrete barriers. Looks like every barrier has a tab. They're clean, they're new condition. That's good. The barrels, the tubes. They're all new condition. They've got reflective material on them. They're set up, they're spaced right. So that's good. The other thing to talk about in this picture are the raised pavement markers. So first of all, there's two different colors. Obviously, there's yellow and white, and you want to make sure, obviously, that they're where they should be, and they are. They're spaced correctly. They're in the right spot. That's good. Now, the one thing that you're going to have to watch when you have raised pavement markers, at least what I've found is, those things will get run over. They'll get scraped off. They'll get out of position. You need to make sure that if those things get knocked out of place, that they either get picked up, removed from the project, and then you got to make sure that the new ones are put back in, because if you drive through this at night and those raised pavement markers are out of place and maybe some cones get run over or whatever, it could get confusing to the traveling public coming through there. So you want to make sure that any debris or anything that gets knocked out of place during the construction project gets picked up. This is another setup I just want to talk about, quickly. The 2 lanes of traffic here, and we've got stackable vertical panels and tubes. And the main thing I see with stackable vertical panels is sometimes they get put out there and they're not channelizing the traffic in the right direction. This particular case on this picture, these are all set up correctly. They're all pointing in the right direction, down and towards the lane of traffic. And then we've got the tubes down the middle. Now, the other thing that's going to happen on this particular setup, like I talked about earlier, is you can see the one lane is gravel. So when it rains or when the contractor gets out here and waters for dust control, those devices are going to get dirty. And you just got to make sure you go through there when you inspect it and make sure that those devices get cleaned so that everything is still working as it was intended. Especially at night, because if they're dirty, there's not going to be any reflective material that you'll be able to see at night. So another thing I want to just kind of talk about as an example is this particular standard drawing. Now, this is a flagging setup. It's standard drawing 70433. Now, you're looking for the same thing in these setups as far as the correct signs, the spacing. But when it comes to flagging setups, I always like to think of a few other things that can cause an issue out there. Preferably you want to set them up on a flat area with good vision. You don't want to put a flagger just over the crest of a hill. And you also, out here we have a lot of oil field traffic, a lot of trucks, and stopping traffic either down a hill or up a hill is not good because of their ability to or inability to stop quickly. So coming down a hill isn't good. And same way when they're starting up, if they're on an incline to start up once the pilot car takes off, it takes those trucks quite a while to get going. And if there's multiple trucks, it's a domino effect, and it takes a long time to get those trucks out of your queue. So preferably set up a flagging situation at a flat location if you can. On the standard drawing, you'll see the portable rumble strip array. Just to tell you a quick story, in 2016, we had a project out here in one of our rural roads. We had a flagging set up. It was on a flat piece of road. It was rural, so there wasn't much happening. Had all the signs up, correct spacing, correct location. Flagger had a car stopped. It was happened to be a father and 3 of his kids, and they're waiting for the pilot car. This was before rumble strips, and pickup came behind him. I'll just say it was a distracted driver, ran into the back of the car. Both cars ended up in the ditch. Pickup ended up flipped over. The guy driving got out of his window and wasn't hurt at all. In the other car, 2 of the 3 kids were killed, and the father died. So these rumble strips, I guess, out here, I mean, they're important. I truly think if those rumble strips would have been up on that particular instance, the distracted driver would have felt them, knew something was going on, and probably would have avoided the accident. But anyway, I just want to talk about that a little bit. But the other thing is about those rumble strips is, there's requirements on how they're set up, and once they get out of their original pattern, they need to be replaced at some point. The other thing about flagging setups I want to talk about is when you get through a flagging setup, make sure that speed limit sign is up on the other end to get traffic back up to speed. Because a lot of times you'll go through a flagging setup or a flagging zone, and you don't get traffic back up to speed on the other end, and that's and there's nothing going on. And of course, traveling public, they're just gonna accelerate anyway. So make sure that speed limit sign gets back up. Sometimes that gets missed. So some other items to check, as far as traffic control goes during the project is, do the signs that are set up actually match the conditions? Because if they don't, it becomes confusing and they need to be removed from the project. Good example is flagger setup. A lot of times you'll come into a flagger setup, you'll have all the signs and everything, and you'll get up there and there's no flagger. There's no pilot car, there's nothing. If that's the case, that flagging setup needs to be removed. Another issue that we run in sometimes is you'll come onto a project and they'll reduce your speed, but then there's nothing going on for miles. And once the public does that, if they slow down and they drive for miles with nothing going on, the speed limit, it doesn't apply anymore, and they're going to disregard it, and they're gonna increase their speed. So make sure that the speed limit posted in the work zone matches the conditions out there. Ultimately, remove any and all signs that aren't applicable to the situation. Another thing we watch for is the length of a pilot car zone. When contractors get out there in the mornings to set up their pilot car zones, they want to set it up as long as they can so they can work in it all day, but that's not really necessary. They should only set it up for what they really need. We want to keep those pilot car zones tight. We want to get traffic through there as quickly and efficiently as possible. And sometimes it's just too long. You'll drive through maybe a mile of work, and then you'll go 6 miles of nothing going on. They can shorten that zone up depending on what's going on. And then keep the project clean. Whether a tube gets ran over or a barrel's blown in the ditch or a sign or whatever, pick all that stuff up, because anytime there's stuff blowing around on the project, it just becomes a hazard to traveling public, to people working out there. So we always want to keep the project clean. And ultimately, does it make sense? Again, if you or one of your family members, that aren't familiar with the project at all, does it make sense to them? Are they able to drive through the construction zone to easily navigate it, get through? So just make sure that all the signs up, all the devices up, makes sense to people trying to get through the zone. Another thing is night survey. The contractor's required, I think, once a week to go out and do a night survey on the traffic control. Now, I think the engineering staff every once in a while should go out and just to make sure that everything makes sense at night, whether it's anything, raised pavement markers, the reflectivity of the signs. I mean, in this particular example, the signs on the right, you can barely see them. Those would probably need to be replaced. The ones on the left looks like they have good reflectivity, so those are good, but you should always check that once in a while just to make sure that it's working at night the way it's intended to work. So I've got a couple pictures here of things I've seen out I just want to talk about. So this particular sign was on a county road actually, which it is the correct sign and it's put in the right spot, but it just doesn't look right. It's upside down. Is what the deal is. So almost got it right, but still, it's it's wrong. It's probably I don't know what happened when they installed it, but it happened. There it is. So yeah, you just want to review everything to make sure that it makes sense.
Hey, Bill, this is Bernie from the Bismarck District.
Yeah.
Before we get too far from that flagging deal, I got a question. If you're in a situation where you already got a reduced speed limit sign for the project, like on a chip seal project you got that speed limit ahead sign and, reduced speed ahead sign and a speed limit sign. We got to reduce the 55 miles an hour in a zone that's 10 miles an hour less than, and there's space that, you got those signs every 3 to 5 miles. You think we could, there's no way I can eliminate those according to the standard drawing, but they're kind of, a bunch of extra stuff to carry around on when you already, I don't know. I don't like the speed limit reduced sign for one thing. And I know this is probably beyond things, but there used to be rules where if it was, you didn't need that if it was, you were reducing the speed by less than 20 miles an hour. They just seem two extra signs that they put in there that in some situations this there's a lot of extra signs that drag around and set up, but
Yeah, well, and I hate to punt on your on your comment, but I mean, I think that's kind of a design question,
yeah, that's what I was wondering, because before it used to be kind of optional. They had rules for that stuff, and it just seems like on this standard drawing they just took some of that stuff away.
Right.
But I mean, I just wondering other people's opinions on that. It's just more stuff to blow over. But all right, well, I guess we'll just leave it that way. But that's just something I kind of noticed. It's a bunch of extra signs on there that
Right.
when the speed's already reduced by 10, I just making a point. I don't know what other people's opinions are, but
Okay. Yeah, I don't know if anyone else has an opinion on that or not.
maybe that's something to talk about at a different time.
Sure.
Maybe when you guys get together with some of your in meetings with the district engineers or assistant district engineers or something. I don't know. Thank you.
Yep.
Say, Bill, I was just gonna chime in on a quick comment before you get too far past the, going out and checking traffic control. It's a good idea to go out at night. I have made a point to do it. It can be hard to do in the summertime. Means you got to stay up till 11 o'clock or whatever before you make that drive. But I guess one thing I do, not related to night traffic control, but usually when I pull up to a job, work is already going on. My technicians are out there. I'm coming out for a field visit. One thing I'll do, or usually first thing I'll do, is I'll drive through the job as if I'm a public motorist, not as an engineer necessarily. Just see, does the traffic control make sense? Are there things that would trip up traveling public? And I usually don't even stop at, at whatever the action is first time through, because I want to see how the traffic zone is before I do anything else, because that's what people are gonna notice. The public is gonna notice. So if people aren't doing that, I think that's a good tool. Just basically, I'll wait in a pilot car. I know I can throw my light on and go into the job, but if there's a flagging station, I'll wait there. I'll time to see how long it's taking before traffic gets going. It's just a good check of kind of the overall traffic control situation if you pretend you're the traveling public, so you experience what they're experiencing.
And that's really who we're setting it up for, right, Dustin? I mean, most of us are out there every day. We know what's going on. We know where we should be, where we shouldn't be. But really, we're setting it up for the people that have never been there. They don't know really what's going on. And we want to make sure they get through there, easily and safely. So, yeah. This particular picture, I just put it up, spacing really, on the left, we've got a detour sign behind a post, which you may or may not see. And on the right, we got a couple things wrong there. Number one, the end roadwork sign is directly behind a roadwork 1,500 feet sign. And secondly, roadwork 1,500 feet, and then we end roadwork 10 feet behind it. So, I mean, those are things you want to look for to make sure that they make sense, because that particular setup, that does not make sense. And this is a good example as well. We've got one sign that says merge left and one side that says merge right. So you just want to make sure that we don't make it confusing for the traveling public. This picture actually was taken in our parking lot out front. I got a visitor one day who came up Highway 85, wasn't very happy. He was driving northbound and there was a truck southbound and kicked up a rubber base from a tube, and it came through his windshield, went right over his shoulder, and ended up busting out his back window and sitting in his back seat. So it's a perfect example of why you want to clean up debris in the work zone, because stuff like that can happen. It's dangerous. So again, why do we use traffic control? Is to promote highway safety and efficiency. And you guys can probably tell by how eloquently this is written that I didn't write that. I got that out of a book, but really that's what we're trying to accomplish, is to notify the users of what's ahead and get them through safely and efficiently. So to kind of wrap up, to go over the things that we look for out here, to make sure that it's a good traffic control setup. So we want to, number one, make sure that it's the right setup. And then make sure that everything out there is correct. It's being used correctly. We've got the spacing right. The signs that are installed are actually put up correctly. An example, arrows pointing the right way. Make sure the signs aren't installed upside down, or whatever. The big thing, like I said, I mentioned earlier, is channelizing on those stackable vertical panels to make sure that they're pointing down and towards the direction of travel. Are the devices in an acceptable condition? We want the devices to serve their purpose. So we want them to be in a good, acceptable condition so that they can be easily seen. Keep them clean. We run into that a lot out here with some of the projects we have, is just all the dirt and everything on the roads is keeping them clean. And sometimes they have to go through a couple times a day to clean them up, because they get so dirty so easily. And do the devices match the actual conditions? We want to make sure that we're not confusing people out there, that we only have the devices up that are needed and that are matching the conditions. And ultimately, does it make sense? Like Dustin touched on, if someone going through the project for their first time, does it make sense? Are they able to navigate through it safely with little or no confusion? With that, I'll take any other questions you may have. And if not, I will pass it on to Megan.
Any questions for Bill before I take over? Be here. Okay, can you see my screen and hear me?
Yes, Megan can.
Okay, so I got tasked with discussing project and inspection diaries. I know a lot of us have written them for a long time, but it's always good to kind of go through the basics again. So I'm going to be discussing what they are, what they're not, what's expected to be in them. And I'll also show you some real world examples from previous projects. So according to Webster's dictionary, a diary is a book in which one keeps daily records of events and experiences. Maybe you had one in elementary or middle school, that you kept a list of your friends or your crush or what made them so special and recorded all your secrets. It was maybe kept safe with a silver lock. Well, the construction record manual is somewhat similar, but they define a diary as being used to document work progress, site condition, labor and equipment usage, conversations, instructions, and the contractor's ability to complete his or her work. There are many reasons why diaries are important. One is to document the progress of work, site conditions, labor and equipment usage as stated in the definition. This allows others who are not on the project and have access to cars to be able to see what's going on with the project. Diaries are also important because they document conversations with the contractor, instructions, letters, emails, texts to the contractor. We are documenting their ability to perform the work, but most importantly, all of this information may be needed in case there's an NOI or a claim to help mitigate any damages, because we all know the saying, if it isn't written down, it didn't happen. So within cars, there's two types of diaries. There's a project diary that is assigned to the project manager. This person should be on the project daily, and the main contact for the contractor is superintendent. If this person is gone or out of the office for whatever reason, within cars, they can assign a secondary project manager or engineer that can fill out the diary while the main one is gone. There's also the inspection diary, and that needs to be filled out daily by any inspector, surveyor, or technician that are on the project dealing with specific items. The project manager on some projects may also be a project inspector and need to fill out both diaries. So let's dive a little deeper into what each of these diaries are. Most of this information can be found within the CARS manual in section 3, pages 5 through 13. So inspection diaries are created for the prime contractor and for each of the subcontractors that's working on the project for that day. So if there's a prime and 3 subcontractors working on the project, there's going to be 4 inspection diaries. A little extra tip, this is one way to track and make sure that the subcontractor has an approved subcontract. Construction services, after they add the subcontract into CARS, adds the subcontractor into the inspection diary dropdown. So if you can't find the subcontractor in that list, they may not have an approved subcontract. So within the inspection diary, for this one, for example, that's shown on the screen is for 3D specialties, is either the prime or the subcontractor that this diary is for. All the information in this inspection diary should only be for that subcontractor or contractor. The information should be entered and noted as the work progresses through the day. Within both the inspection and project diaries, make sure to only provide factual information about the project and no opinions. So starting at the top, the remarks should always include some information about the traffic control, as Bill just discussed in the previous presentation. Traffic control is important, especially if there's any accidents later on that happen, to have it documented in the inspection diary that traffic control was up, if there's any corrections that needed to be made. And we should also put in the remarks any scheduling problems if there was an issue with either workers or getting people on the site. It's this would be a good place to put anything about that. So moving down next to the work in progress. This area should list the hours that are worked by the contractor and summarize the work as it progresses through the day. It should summarize key points of any discussion and conversations, especially if you have given any specific direction to the contractor. When discussing work items, it's best to include the location the work is occurring at, the spec and code items, and any quantities. The quantities can be an exact number, for example, a length of a pipe that was installed, or you could list ticket numbers that were collected for a specific station range if they were laying, for example, class 5. Also important to document is when and where any testing has occurred. Say you have a concrete overlay project, you might have in your work in progress, it might say that the sample was taken from truck number 5 at station 800, slump air and temperature were all completed and passed. So that could be entered by either the inspector or the tester, or maybe entered by both. So if we go down to the next section within the inspection diary, it's the labor force. I think this area often gets overlooked as not as important, but with the DOT's increasing responsibility for checking payrolls and having someone who is not the inspector maybe looking through LCP tracker, this can be very valuable information. Having an accurate account for what labor force was there and when they were on site to verify LCP tracker at a later date. So an example I have is, say your inspector diary said that 3D was out on the project and they had 4 inspectors installing, or they had 4 laborers installing signs for 12 hours. But when you check LCP tracker for 3D on that specific day, it only shows 2 laborers working for 8 hours. You know, this should raise some red flags for the person checking LCP tracker. That something isn't matching up and to look into it further. Or there's also an area for comments within the labor force. So maybe the contractor started out with 4 laborers, but 2 got called off to fix traffic control on another project. So 2 worked for 4 hours and the other 2 worked for 12 hours. So again, you can put that within the comments so that when you're checking LCP tracker at a later date, you can verify that it's correct. So the next 2 sections are weather and documents. Weather should be added only if it affects the project. For example, the heat index was over 100 for the day and the concrete contractor had to stop work at 4 because they couldn't keep the existing asphalt surface below 110 while watering it. So, or maybe there was rain on the west end of the project that shut the west end down, but the east end didn't get as much precipitation and the contractor was able to install pipes on the east end. So, you know, it might not affect the whole project, but it write down what events or what items that it did affect. And then under weather is the documents. This is where the inspector can attach any emails, texts, conversations that they have in writing. And you can also add pictures that add immense documentation to the diary. But pictures only do so much if they're done in the correct way. So a picture says 1,000 words, but also can create 1,000 questions if it's not documented correctly. So in this picture shown on the screen, what are we looking at? What is the brown gray area? Is it dirt? Is it concrete? So all pictures should be documented in the diary as to why they are attached and what they're showing. So for example, in this picture, it was referenced in the project diary or inspection diary saying that 4 to 5 inches of asphalt was milled off the existing bridge deck on a specific bridge number, and the deck concrete showed through at some spots and the mill was brought up so the deck would not be damaged. So now we have some context as to what this picture is showing. Another way to document pictures is by adding a note directly on the picture with the camera app. So on your cell phone or on your iPad, just putting a text note right on the picture after you've taken it. So on the left there, you see it has a station number and what happened. And then on the right hand, you can see, maybe you can see it, there's some detailed information on the upper left-hand corner of that other picture that was generated by the Theodolite app that's on all of our iPads. And it can be used at a later date to get the exact location the picture was taken at. It also has the time the picture was taken at and the date. And then within the Theodolite app, you can set up different parameters to add notes right as you're taking the picture. So this one has that at a certain station, a basket was dragged 3 feet to the east. And it also automatically can populate in there, if you set it up correctly, to have the PCN number and the whoever took the picture. So the last item within the inspection diary is the equipment. Some contractors, if you ask them at the beginning of the project, can provide you with the list of their equipment, but most of the time the equipment is added as it arrives on the project and is used. From the main diary page, the inspector can click on and add the add equipment button and then add a description of the equipment. You add the unit number, the type, and a description, and if you want to add it in the diary as shown there. So types of equipment available in the drop down are backhoe, compactor, crane, dozer, excavator, grader, loader, other, paver, scraper, and skid steer. So, you know, big pieces of equipment, pickup trucks and things like that, unless it's a smaller project, generally don't need to be inventoried. We want the work or the bigger piece of equipment that are doing the work. So if it's added into the inspection diary, the inspector should add start and end times as well as breakdown or idle times. Relating to the equipment, notes can also be added to the remarks as far as if there's any equipment breakdown or major problems or shortages of equipment for the day. One thing I'd add about equipment is if there's multiple inspectors watching the same operation or multiple operations using the same equipment and or labor, I find it best for the project manager to assign one of the inspectors to document all the diary in their diary, all the equipment and labor force used, and then the other inspectors can reference that person's diary. That's kind of a general summation of the inspection diary. Now we're going to move over to the project diary. Excuse me. Remember, the project diary can only be filled out by the project engineer or project manager assigned to the project in CARS. The project diary should not be a copy of the inspection diaries, but sometimes, as I've stated before, especially on smaller projects where the project engineer is an inspector, they may need to fill out both. A project diary is a summary of all the inspection diaries. If someone's not on the project, they should be able to read only the project diary and get a good grasp of what items have been completed throughout the day. So again, starting through the different items here that are included in the project diary with remarks. Remarks, that's where the summary should be, pertinent facts and events arranged in chronological order. Any directions or conversations with the contractor should be listed there, and any references to any documents that have been added. The next section is the contract time. When the edit button is selected on this one, the project engineer can select from 3 options for the day charged, either not charged, half day, or full day. And for the days worked, they can select either a half day or a full day. So in the specifications, section 108.06A2 states the engineer will charge a full working day, at least 7 hours, or a half working day, more than 3 hours, but less than 7 hours for each calendar day of the contract. The contractor can effectively perform work on the critical paths. And then in the specs, it goes on to list a number of conditions of what's a full day and what's a half day and when to charge or not. This is important on all projects, but it's especially important when you're looking at working day contracts. So the next section is engineering staff. This should be a full list of all people that were on the project that day. This list should include any inspectors, technicians and testers, surveyors, consultant staff, and site visitors. For example, if materials and research or the designer have come up to the project for the day, or maybe Poppy and the communications group came out to take pictures on site, that would be something good to put in there. I also make sure to put if FHWA or environmental comes out to do an inspection, just so that it's documented who was on site on what days. Again, the last two sections within the project diary are weather and documents. As with the inspection diary, the project diary also has a spot for weather. The weather on the project diary and inspection diary both include a spot to add a rain gauge, which is required on all projects which have a SWIP and should be checked daily. Again, same with the inspection diaries. Weather on the project diary should only be added notes if it affected the contractor's work. And the last section is documents again with comments. There should never be a document with just an attachment. There should be a remark or comment stating why it is attached and why it's important to the project. Some examples that you might upload under documents would be pictures, emails, letters, RFIs, and the responses to them. This is also a good place to include notes or meetings from the weekly coordination or weekly utility meetings, and all communication that you gave direction to the contractor in. Not all emails need to be attached, but the ones that are really important are the ones that you've given them direction in. So I went through our older diaries and I found some examples of some needs improvement diary. So starting at the top, there's no remarks on this diary. This is where you normally would put more remarks on traffic control on the project. So you'd like to see something there. Moving down, there's no time worked, so we kind of got to guess based on the comments what time the contractor was out there. Reading this diary looks like someone may have been taking over from inspector midday, so they may not have the start time, but could reference Inspector X's diary for a start time. There's information about when the inspector left the office and got to the job site. Most of the time, these details about the inspector's day aren't really needed in the diary. We're supposed to be documenting what the contractor has done on the project, not what we're doing on the project. A lot of times I'll keep my own personal, written diary of like when I get there and leave and things like that, so that, I can do my timesheet later, but that shouldn't be included within this CARS document diary. This inspector, it looks good because they have a timestamp, so they're adding stuff as the day goes on. But if you look at, say, the 5 or 15:30, it says move to station or move to 4:39. But it doesn't say what 4039 is. Is it a station? Is it a bid item? Is it an address? What has moved to 439? Then below it says 451 drilled holes for tie bars. So I can make the guess that it's a pipe, but what size? How much was installed? And then if we go down to the bottom at time 2000, it says that both groups finished for the day. This is the first mention of more than one crew. So kind of, you don't get really a great idea of what has happened in the day. So moving down farther into that same inspection diary, says 2 laborers and 2 operators. No foreman or superintendent are mentioned here. Generally, you should have a superintendent, but on smaller projects, maybe there isn't one and it's just, the operators, or maybe a different inspector has included the superintendent or foreman on theirs. Weather on this diary is included saying that the rain gauge had 0.7 inches of rain, but it has no indication of whether or not it affected the project. And then for equipment, it says that there wasn't any equipment used. Again, from the previous slide, if we're assuming they're putting in pipe, most contractors in North Dakota have upgraded to use more than just a shovel. So the labor does state that there's 2 operators. We just don't know what equipment that they were operating that day. So the same inspector was given a few pointers, and a couple days later, I found this inspection diary for the same project. They were watching a very similar operation. The first thing they did was they referenced another inspector's diary saying that to see, Inspector X's diary for any work completed before 1350. So you can see that they're taking over for somebody else. Next, it states that the contractor had 2 groups working on the pipe today, one cleaning and one doing pipe installation. Then it states that it has a station, it has times. It says that they were working on a cattle guard. The diary documents conversations with other inspectors on the project. I'm not going to read the entire diary, but if you read the last couple sentences that are highlighted in red there, it has where they finished, the bid items that they worked on, the quantities, and it goes on from there. I think it got cut off. So, but anyway, someone not on the project or the project engineer on this one could easily read through this and have a very clear, distinct description of what this inspector watched for the day. Going down from that, you can see under labor that they reference another inspector's diary for the superintendents and the foreman. The weather says that there is 0 inches of rain. So, I'm assuming that no weather affected the contractor that day. Documents, there's nothing added here, but, maybe pipe clean out. If there was pipe being cleaned out for the day, it might be a good idea to add a picture of the pipe saying at 2 o'clock, they finished cleaning out the pipe and it was clear, just so that in the future, if we get a further rainstorm or whatever, we have documents saying like what it looked like at that time when they were doing the work on there. And then here you can also see that equipment was added. They had a couple excavators and a skid steer in operation today, which I assume is probably more effective than a hand shovel, which I assumed in the previous diary. So why diaries? Why are we doing these? These are just a couple examples of inspection diaries. I think quite often as project engineers and inspectors, we know they're important, but when we're out there in the field on the construction site, it may feel like we're being pulled in a million directions, getting phone calls, having to put out a fire that's happening now, coordinating testing, entering pay quantities, running to the plant, etc. Often diaries just fall to the bottom of the list. But as I've stated previously in this presentation, if it's not written down, it didn't happen. And why is it important to write it down? Because when, and not if, when you're in a situation where a contractor submits an NOI or a claim, the inspector diaries may be the only spot of where it's recorded of what actually took place. In our district's experience, more often than not, the contractor does not keep a diary of the project's progress. Most of the time, the contractors guess about the dates and the times after the fact. But if our team can pull out a good project diary that shows dates and times and names the people on the site at the time, or an email that was sent that can it can really help our defense. If we have to go down the road of an NOI or a claim. So with that, I'll take any questions, and thank you for your time. Don't leave your friends behind on the truck.
Thanks, Megan. Thanks, Bill. I don't see any really questions other than some comments in the chat. Well, that wraps it up for today. I guess we'll see everybody next week at the same time and some more presentations. Thanks.
Good job to all the presenters. Thank you.
Thank you very much.